Absolutely, Nonku. So I think what we're talking about here is most people think being financially successful or being financially resilient or well is all about how much you earn. And actually, it's not. It's about how much you keep. And what that comes down to...
Sorry, repeat that. It's such an important thing.
It's not about how much you earn. It's about how much you keep. So when I do webinars and training that I do, one of the things I talk about is we all understand really clearly that the companies we work for, the companies that we know well and love in South Africa, we know that those companies need to be profitable in order to stay in business. If they're not profitable, they are going to eventually go out of business and go bankrupt. But what we fail to do is make the same leap when it comes to our personal finances. We don't ever think about our personal profitability. And one of the reasons for that is our lack of financial education. Financial education is something that's not often taught intentionally in homes, in households, or in schools or tertiary institutions for that matter. And so that's where we come in, and that's why we're so passionate about financial education, because when you know better, you do better. If you then understand that the goal of, every month you have, every year you have 12 opportunities to make a profit. You've got 12 paydays to use to make a profit when it comes to your personal finances. When you understand that that's the game plan, and then you get passionate about figuring out how you can do that better. What does it mean to make a profit, and how do I do that? How do I increase my ability to save and invest? What is the difference between savings and investments, for example? When you understand that, then obviously you can do things differently. And so that's why we're really passionate about ensuring more people not only know about the life-changing difference this can make, but actually get themselves a financial education.
I love that. I mean, you've said some powerful things. It's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. So to keep your money is pretty important. The idea of personal profitability, it's such an important idea, not one that we think about often. So you have goals, you want to be profitable every month. If you're not, there are things for you to change in order to get there. I also love the idea of 12 opportunities, 12 paychecks, 12 opportunities. I need to really go think about my personal profitability. But Mosima, you wanted to wedge in here.
I wanted to touch on what Mama Terry said around the saving practices that she sees in spaces where she lives, which I also do see that amongst the Black community, because that's the community I'm exposed to, definitely saving as a culture for funerals, it's there. And I take that to be the point that Haley mentioned, is what you know. When you know, you do better. So I really just want to give kudos to Power FM and to the work that Haley and Cash are doing to actually empower people with information, because I genuinely believe that once people know and understand the steps they need to take, they are able to actually start actioning. So what we see is a function of so many reasons, but in essence, it gives you a glimpse of what people know, what people's realities are, because every single person wants to do what's best for them and their families. So really credit to you ladies for the amazing work that you do to empower us with knowledge so we can do better for our families.
I love that. Hels, I'm going to come back to you again. You used to talk to us about the fact that when you put people through financial education, there was almost a baseline. You had something about you need to have X in your pocket for a rainy day. Can you talk to us through sort of the transition that you get people to make in behavior, and what is that process that you guys go through, and how do you know you are in a good place financially? I'm not talking about you're in a good place because you have lots of money, because you could have lots of money still poorly treated. So what formula do you guys sort of put in place? What do you teach us, and how does a person know when they're in the right space?
So I think I'm going to start there, Nonku. For most people, knowing you're in a comfortable space when it comes to your finances is when you can sleep well at night. For a lot of South Africans, that's not the case. There are a lot of people losing a lot of sleep every night because their financial situation is so stressful. I think it underpins the work that you do in wellness generally, is understanding the importance that financial wellness plays as part of your mental wellness and your physical wellness, because this impacts everything. And so there's two sides that we need to look at. The first is we need to remove risk. We need to protect our downside before we can start looking at how we improve the upside. And, this speaks to what Cash was talking about earlier as well. When you remove risk, you create a buffer for yourself. And that is the first step that I think you were referring to. And it's what we advocate because it's one of the most important things you can do for yourself and your personal finances. And that is put in place an emergency fund. Now,
sorry, what is remove risk? Tell me practically, what do I do to remove risk?
It's not if bad things are going to happen that are going to impact your bank account, but when. And I think if COVID taught us anything, it was that, right? Bad things can and will impact not only your ability to earn, but also how it affects your bank account and your bottom line. So there's a lot of things that we can't control, particularly when it comes to our money. But what we need to do is focus on the things we can control. And by putting in place an emergency fund, what you're doing is you're creating a buffer between yourself and your bank account and whatever it is that life is going to throw at you. Now that buffer, if you can imagine the way a shock absorber works in a car, you're trying to just soften the blow between whatever's coming and how it's going to impact you and your household by focusing on this thing that you can control. And so we like to give people two goals. The first is when you put in place an emergency fund, try to make sure you have 5,000 Rand in that emergency fund. Now, it may not sound like a lot, but you'll be amazed at how many emergencies, financial emergencies, can be covered by that amount. I'm talking about transport emergencies and health emergencies and things that happen with your kids and you desperately need money now, right? Once that's in place, then your goal is 3 months worth of living expenses. For a lot of people, having 3 months worth of living expenses in an emergency fund is enough to help them sleep at night. And that's the thing that we were talking about. How do you know you're getting it right? Well, if you've got that buffer in place where you know that if things go wrong, that you've got 3 months worth of living expenses, that's a great place to start. In terms of your finances. And obviously, I'm going to recommend getting yourself a financial education. It's the ultimate DIY job for a skill that we all need from the moment we start earning our first salary until the time we retire and beyond. We are going to be responsible for managing our money, and it's in our best interest if we do it well.
Thanks, Hayley. Please join the conversation. Give us a call on 0861 987 000. On the line now, Minila wants to talk about prioritizing education in our society. Minila, share more with us.
Hi, thank you for the time. I just want to quickly thank Hayley and Kashmira for the work that they're doing, because I think it's extremely important to be financially literate. Even for the youth, you would assume, or you would think rather, that we are more financially literate than our parents, but I don't think we put it to practice. So it's very important that, we make the youth aware, or we are fully aware of the implications of not planning financially for your future, which could have terrible implications, God forbid. But yeah, I just want to say thank you for that. And I think it's extremely important what you guys are doing.
Thank you so much, Manila. Really appreciate that. We're going to continue with the conversation, and then I'm going to ask the ladies to wrap up with a call to action, which I think is critical in this space.
Hayley, thank you so much for the nuggets that you shared. I have a question to say, how would you translate the insights you're sharing to someone who earns per month, who takes home 2,000 Rand a month, 2,500 a month, where at the surface of it, and I'm talking because my gran used to work as a domestic worker, and I think when she was earning her pension, it was 1,000 a month or something like that. How does one break down this conversation for someone who barely can make ends meet?
Mosima, it's a challenge. Let's not beat around the bush here that if you are barely able to earn a living wage, the conversations that we're having are different. They are not exactly the same. That said, financial education is important for everybody, because one of the most important things we can do is ensure that the money that you do have, you manage to the best of your ability. And for example, in that space, I would say one of the most important things that we can teach is to be careful of debt. That can take your situation from bad to worse pretty quickly. And so we need to have these conversations so that we empower people to understand that things that may be presented to them as a gift could actually land up being a burden. But until you understand how it works, the mechanisms of debt, you may not be aware of that. And so there's so many aspects that we need to look to. But I'm not shying away from the fact that that is a really tough, it's a tough conversation to have. That said, we have had some fascinating conversations, and we put the stuff into our courseware because we are all about the things you can control, right? And so in a culture that we're talking about, there are still people who, and in particular women, who are earning these kinds of wages who still manage to put money aside into a stokvel, for instance. And what the conversation is that we're having there now is, let's put in place stokvels that are passionate about investing, where we have stokvels that are for our future financial selves and not just a consumption event at the end of the year, for example. So these are the kinds of conversations that we want to have, and it all starts with, let's start talking about money. That is something historically that we haven't been great at doing as a culture, anyway. And so for me, focusing on what we can control and getting good at the money, managing the money we have, is a really good starting point. And then we can take that conversation further.
Thank you, Hayley. Completely agree.
Wonderful. Ladies, it's so sad to bring this to a close, but I think what you've given us is completely relevant, important, and applicable. Cash, let me start with you. If you were to leave something with us today, if you were to say a call to action for me around financial well-being and being resilient in this space is, what would that be?
It is to plan for what you least expect. And I think that's the biggest lesson that I've taken out of so many things in life, is to just plan for that thing that you least expect. At least if you can weather that storm, then you will be okay. And, there's only, get yourself a financial advisor. Those guys know exactly what they're talking about. They're learned in the space, and they can teach you a lot to manage what you do have, no matter what amount that is, and to make your money work for you, and at the same time to ensure that you never face the financial difficulties that someone without the know-how does.
Such an important nugget. And I would just say it's important for people to understand that a financial advisor doesn't cost you money just to give you advice. And it's a myth that people have in their minds. It's important to understand that only when you get a particular product, as an example, you get a medical aid or you get life insurance, etc., that the financial advisor will pay commission. And that doesn't come from you either. That's built in to the premium that you pay. So it really is a privilege to be able to sit down with someone, talk about your finances, talk about where you're at and what you need, and then get them to advise you without having to pay anything up front.
And move around. Find a financial advisor that fits your personality and your finances and your style of budgeting. I think that's a very important thing. They will become a part of your family and have a seat at your table.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And then, Hales, if we were to close with you, call to action.
Nonku, I think it is this. Getting yourself a financial education is both your problem and your privilege. It's the ultimate DIY job. And so I would encourage anyone listening today to really invest in themselves with getting themselves a financial education and understanding how it can change things not only for themselves and their financial future, but for the generations that follow. It really is that big a deal. And once you start on the journey, don't forget to have fun. You're talking now about looking at things like a financial advisor. One of the courses we created for you was called Shopping for a Financial Advisor, because I mean that. You try on 5 pairs of shoes before you buy one. The same should apply to when you're going looking for a financial advisor. You want a good fit. You want somebody who you gel with, who makes you feel comfortable. There's no such thing as a stupid question when it comes to your money. These are all the kinds of things that you want to be talking about. But getting yourself a financial education and starting a journey towards empowering yourself with that knowledge is an incredible first step on that journey. And I really would encourage everybody, but in particular the women listening today, to do that as a gift to themselves.
I love that. I mean, I would just be seeing big goals like, how do I travel for 3 months in a year? How do I plan for that? Because we don't think about that, right? We think about de-risk only. No, de-risk, but also work towards your goals and have fun.